And really just getting into it, the key players for next year that will be gone, or in all likelihood gone, will be Quade Green and Hamir Wright. Both of them are seniors, so both of them won't have any eligibility left. Green's an interesting case, as there might be some loophole for him to have eligibility left with him having transferred from Kentucky his sophomore year, playing 9 games there, and then coming to UW and his junior year only playing 15 games because of being suspended to end the year with academic ineligibility. But in all the more likelihood, Amir Wright and Quade Green will both be gone next year. So who does that really leave? The Huskies. And just a quick assumption that I'm going to be making is I don't really expect any of one to opt out for or to enter into the NBA draft early, as quite frankly, personally, I don't think any of these young guys or even juniors are good enough for that or would be a wise move at all for them to make. That's just something that I'll be assuming won't happen. So that leaves us with the core players for next year. That'll be Jamal Bay, Nate Roberts, Eric Stevenson, Cole Badgema, and Marcus Sahonis. Those are the guys who have been getting the most minutes so far this year, and the guys that will all, in all likelihood, be back next year as well. Now, the coaching staff also appears as though it will be the exact same, with Jen Cohn in an interview a couple weeks ago giving her full support to Mike Hopkins. And looking at that squad that's put together, putting a few role players in Riley Sorn early and a couple other guys. And Nate Pryor should be back as well. So Sorn, Pryor, a couple young guys coming off the bench. It's hard to believe that they'd be much better than they are currently. I mean, you also look at the recruits that they're getting. They have one recruit for next year signed, and that's a 4-star center out of a little city in Washington, and that's Jackson Grant. But I find it hard to believe that he'll really make an immediate impact for the Huskies, especially with Nate Roberts and Riley Sorn still being there for next year. Jackson Grant can take that year to kind of improve upon his skills, maybe build some muscle as he's a little on the small size at only 205 pounds. And as far as young guys that they've been developing from the class of 2020, UW ended up only having one recruit this past year. He was actually a late addition, Dominique Penn. He originally was for the class of 2020, and then he reclassified to the class of 2021. And then partway through the season, he decided to reclassify again back to the class of 2020, and he signed with Washington. He joined the team at the start of this quarter here. And as far as I'm aware, he's been at the games. I haven't seen him in the game. He hasn't gotten in any games or anything. But he's with the team, I believe, practicing. And he was a 3-star guard coming out of high school. So he's not looked at someone who's going to make an immediate impact or really being a huge signing in my eyes. He likely won't be contributing for the rest of this year, and maybe next year he'll be able to get in the rotation. But again, you look at it with Pryor starting at point guard, likely Sahonis starting at point guard, then Pryor coming off the bench. I mean, maybe he can get a couple minutes, but overall, he might not be making an impact for this team. Now, looking at the transfer, if they'll get any transfers, I don't know. Perhaps he'll get a big name transfer, but I find that hard to believe just with how the Huskies have been performing on basketball. I don't see any guys who would want to come here, want to play for Hopkins with his recent track record. So overall, at the moment, it appears as though they won't be getting much help for next year in the terms of replacing Green and replacing Amir Wright. They'll only really be losing those guys. So if the Huskies really want to have any sort of success next year, it's really going to rely on Marcus Sahonis going and developing even further than he has throughout this season. And really, Sahonis is going to have to become what Quade Green is this year, and even better if they want to actually win. From what I've seen from this past week, that's definitely possible. The knock that I had with Sahonis earlier is that he wasn't really consistent. And I think part of that falls on Mike Hopkins as the coach. He really wasn't giving him consistent minutes. Some games, Sahonis would play 20 plus minutes. Other games, he barely touched the court. And for a player, that's really hard to get in a role or get in sync when you don't have reliable minutes. This past week, when Sahonis was getting good minutes, except against USC, he carried the load nicely against the Cougars without Green. He went 13 for 20, scoring 29 points, which was a career high for him. Now against UCLA, he went 7 for 15, scoring 22 points. But then against USC was a game where he struggled. He only managed to get 14 minutes of playing time in that game. With the other games, him getting 20 plus minutes. Again, there's that rotation of Hopkins just cutting someone out for I don't know why. I mean, he wasn't performing overly well. He was 1 for 7 shooting. So I guess it's understandable for him not to be on the court as much. Green was performing very well the second half, so it was probably just left Green in where he scored. I believe that was one of his better games in the past. But then looking again at Sahonis and looking at the games against Oregon for him, he was back up to 23 minutes he played in that game. Shot 6 of 10, 15 points. So, and then against Oregon State, he went 8 for 13, 22 points. So really looking at 4 of the last 5 games, he was extremely efficient in them, scoring nicely. And in all those games, really, Sahonis is good for 2, 3 rebounds and assists each game. So overall, Sahonis has proven to be, at least in the past week or two, he's proven to be what the Huskies hoped Raekwon Battle would be this year and more. Sahonis is a guy who can shoot the ball from deep, and then he also has the ability, similar to Quade Green, where he can get a shot off when he wants to. He can make offense for himself and create offense for the other guys on the team. And that's why really Sahonis needs to be getting 25 minutes per game this year and still coming off the bench, kind of being that sixth man role where he can lead the offense while Green is getting his rest in. And then he can also be out there alongside Green, spot up shooting, just being out there scoring off the ball. Quite frankly, just taking the weight off Green's shoulder. That's what Sahonis has been able to do when he's been able to be out on the court and perform well. At the start of the year, Green was out there all by himself, basically carrying the entire team, and that didn't work. With Sahonis performing nicely these last few weeks, Huskies might not be winning many, but they're competing, and it's actually being close games. The real question, though, is next year without what happens? Is it basically just going to be like the start of this year where you're looking at it as Sahonis is the only guy in the Huskies who can score and he's having to carry the load offensively? And that's really where Bay comes in, and he has to take a step forward alongside Sahonis. He has to be the guy who's been performing like these past few weeks from day one. And he has to shoot more, that's for sure. He has to be assertive next year and take more shots. As currently, he's shooting over 50% from 3, but he hasn't even shot more than 50 of them. I mean, this past game against the Cougars, he only shot the ball 5 times. So ideally, next season, Sahonis should be shooting the ball around 20 times per game. Well, Bay should be putting up around 15 shots per game. Those two guys are the clear leaders on the offense. I mean, they're the most talented, and they have to be the guys the offense runs through if the Huskies want any hope of having a successful year. Because Bay currently is shooting lights out, like I said, from 3, shooting over 50%. And with his size, he's 6'6", so he should be able to develop an inside game where he can drive to the rim, take the contact, and really get to the free throw line or even make the layup through the contact. If those things don't happen, then there's really no reason to believe this Husky squad will be any better than they are right now.